Hello, welcome to My Life in Spain. My name is Mark, and today I want to talk about why you shouldn't buy a bar in Spain. Now, when I first moved to Spain, my wife and I, we were both too young to collect Social Security, so I needed to find a way to make some money. So I had a brilliant idea. I'd buy a bar. I heard that there was a bar for sale in the town where I wanted to go live, and I talked to the owner, who was a Scottish guy called Raymond, nice guy, and we came to an agreement. I paid him what he wanted because I thought it was fair, and I bought the traspaso. Now, the traspaso is a lease, so you don't own the building, you own a lease in the building. Now, the owner was the guy who owned the lottery shop behind where the bar was, called Nacho. And every month he'd come collect a €600 rent from me. First things first. In the beginning, you think, okay, great, this is going to be fun. I had a nice outdoor terrace, I think with six tables probably, and 4 chairs on each table. But little did I know at the time, it makes sense now, you have to pay the tax to have that outdoor terrace. They do it by the number of square meters you take up. It wasn't high, but it was still money, you know. So a lot of the customers, we're talking now, it's back 2010. So a lot of my customers were English or Scottish expats that had moved to live in Spain. Of course, back then, the UK was still in the European Union, so British people could live here without any problems. So what a lot of them would do, they come to Spain, they see the weather, they say, oh, I can buy this house with all this land for this amount of money, or I can get a swimming pool, or... so most of them lived in the countryside. I was the exception. I knew what it was like to have a swimming pool and what it was like to have land and how much time and effort it took to keep it up. So I wanted to live in town, have an apartment, so I could walk to everything that I needed to do. Anyway, so they're out in the countryside. Every Thursday there was a big market in town, and many of them would come in on a Thursday. So that was probably our best day of the week, because all the English would come. I keep saying English, British, because a lot of Scots too would come in, and they stay at the bar drinking. Of course, back then nobody seemed to worry about drinking and driving, which is a much bigger deal now than it was back then. Anyway, I found out later that a lot of these people had come here because property was cheap, and the banks, just like in America, were throwing money at people. If you go in the bank and say, okay, here's 20% down deposit on this property, they would say, how much do you want to borrow? And you say, well, X, Y, Z, and the bank would say, why don't you take another 20,000? You could probably use it to help fix the place up. Oh yeah, great, thanks. So then the recession started to hit. Property prices plummeted. So these people that paid for their houses at the peak of the market were now underwater. And then to add to that, the value of the pound dropped against the euro. So now they're not only making less money, but their houses are worth less than they paid for them. So a lot just packed up and moved back to moved back to the UK. Of the ones who did stay, they're going to say they were mostly retired people. They didn't need the money, but they did complain a lot. Well, British people complain a lot anyway. And because they lived in the countryside, they wouldn't talk to people for all week. So they come into town on a Thursday, and they'd be telling me stories. They'd be telling me the same thing they told me the week earlier. They just couldn't remember telling me. And I didn't say anything. I just said, yeah, well, whatever. And then we had one customer called... We used to call him Farmer John because he owned a house where I think he had palm plantations or bananas or something. And he used to come in, and I hadn't seen him for a few weeks. And he turns up, maybe months even, he turns up again. And I say, hey, John, where have you been? He says, I had a heart attack. He said, I nearly died. He says, by the time the ambulance could find where I live, I was on my last legs. He said, I was really, really lucky. He said, he's opened my eyes. He says, what I'm going to do now, he says, I'm going to sell my house here, and I'm going to move to Alcoy, nearer to the hospital. So if I have another heart attack, I'm there. And I thought about this, and I said, that's not a bad idea. Instead of living here, which is 15 minutes away from the hospital, if you lived closer, if something did happen, you're right there. So that was one of the reasons we decided to move to Alcoy. So getting back to the story. Now, when I first came, I thought, you know what? I'm coming from America, so I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do hot wings. We're going to do Taco Tuesday. We're going to do all these kind of things that Americans like. But what I didn't realize was that, number one, Spanish people don't like spicy food. And number two, they're stuck in their own ways. They think their food is best, and they don't really want to try other food. Maybe some younger people do, but for the majority, they want to stick with the same foods all the time. They're creatures of habit, the Spanish. So they were my good customers. I had one group that was particularly nice. The owner, Baruch, owned a bakery, and they'd start work at 5 in the morning, and they'd stop at lunchtime. And they'd come into the bar, then all the afternoon they're having a few drinks. Now, a lot of the Spanish people I got in the bar, they came to my bar deliberately because I wasn't Spanish. So they knew that I wasn't going to be talking to any of their relatives saying, oh, you should have seen how many beers one had last week. Or, you know, what such and so did. So they would come in my bar because they'd be safe. And I had a really good customer base. So I thought, this is going to work. We're making money. And then the economy got worse and worse. And then luckily I get thrown a lifeline. The Moors and Christians in the summer was like 4 day long. Everybody was partying. And I would stay open 24 hours. I don't even know if I was allowed to or not, but I stay open 24 hours. I make a lot of money. But then a lot of the money I made, I had to pay people for helping me work there. I had one Spanish guy that worked there full time, and then I hired extra people for events or like the Moors and Christians. And then the second one was the Feria de Tots Sants, which is always on the 1st of November. Must include the 1st of November, All Saints Day. And that has a medieval market that brings in 500,000 people, at least. And so the town's packed. That I could take in on that weekend 7,000 euros, which is pretty good. But even after I had to pay everybody off, there was still some money left. So those two things were like my saving grace. I was on the main road, the main road in the old part of town called the Calle Mayor, and all the processions and everything would go down the street my bar was on. And because I had the outdoor tables, I was full the whole time during the Moors and Christians. So anyway, things started getting worse and worse. They don't tell you this, but because you're a commercial premises, you pay your electricity bill and your rates, your taxes, at a higher rate than a household would. So my electric bill would often be 600 euros, and especially in the summer when I had the air conditioning on. Then of course you've got all the refrigerators running and what have you. So that was expensive. And then you've got to submit your VAT and taxes every quarter. So you need an accountant, a Caesarea. You got to pay him. He wasn't cheap. So, and then of course Nacho comes for his 600. So it was going bad, and we're hanging on, but all it seemed to me was it was an awful lot of work for a little bit of money. We'd open early in the morning. We'd open like 9 o'clock or something, and we'd close. During the week, we'd probably close at 6 because there was just no business at night in the old part of town. But on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, we'd stay open till whenever we could, sometimes till 1 o'clock, which was, I think, the latest I was allowed to stay open. And things were just getting hard. And we're paying our rent out for our apartment as well. That was 400 or 450 a month. So money was tight, and you soon realize you're working for the beer company, the brewery, and Iberdrola, the electric company. That's where all your money's going. So we're getting close now to think, well, what are we going to do here? We're barely hanging on. So I called Nacho. I agreed to meet with him in the bar, and I said, "Listen, Nacho," I said, "we're barely hanging in here, and I don't know how much longer I can keep going." And he said, "I said, can I pay you less for the rent?" And he said to me, "How much do you want to pay?" I said, I can afford 400. He said, "Okay, no problem, 400. So he was good about that, because he knew if I left, he might not find anybody and the place would be empty. He wouldn't be making anything, so 400 was better than nothing. Right, so we carry on. We're still turning over. You know, now we're getting to the point where, when it's going to be Moors and Christians again soon, we'll be all right after that, because you've got like a big cash input. And I'm at home one day. This is after lunch, I think, in the afternoon. My wife calls me, and she says, "Do you want to sell the bar?" And I said, "Why?" She said, "There's a woman in here just came in. She asked me if I want to sell the bar." She said she saw it in the real estate office, the Immobiliaria's books. So after I bought the bar for Raymond, they never took it down from their books. So it was still up for sale. So I said, "Yeah, I'll be right there." So I rushed down there, met the woman. I told her how much the price was. It's the same price that I paid Raymond for it. And she said, "Okay, you got a deal." And I sold the bar. Call it luck, call it serendipity. I don't know what you want to call it, but it was very good for me. And because I got rid of something which I was about to lose I'm not going to say how much, but a lot of money for. So in the end, things worked out. But the bottom line of this video is, don't move to Spain and buy a bar. Especially if you're not in a place like in Benidorm, you could probably do well because there's lots of tourists. But in a Spanish town, it's going to be very, very hard, very hard for you. And if you don't speak Spanish, even worse. Luckily, I can speak a little bit. My wife's actually better than I am, to be honest. So we got along fine. And I called the bar Cafe 9. But all the locals called it Cafe Now, because now in Valenciano is 9. So I was Cafe Now, which I thought was kind of cool. All right, so I'll wrap this video up here. Do yourself a favor. Don't look like, I can buy a bar, it'll be great fun. It's not fun. It's hard work, and you make very little money. That's the bottom line. Anyway, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye for now.